Hi guys, and welcome to the Horror Room. So it's been a little while since we've done one of these videos where we're talking about two directors and deciding which one I think is the better. And when it comes to low budget, kind of independent films, what better studios than Troma and Full Moon? That's right. Today we're going to be pitting Lloyd Kaufman against Charles Band. Now, growing up, I like both these movies. I didn't get into Full Moon till a little bit later, but I definitely had my fill of like trauma movies in the early days, watching all the Toxic Avengers, and then going back years later and watching different other trauma movies. Now, most trauma movies are done by other directors, and Lloyd Kaufman and company just kind of help finance or help find people to finance the films. But Lloyd Kaufman himself has directed some of these films. So we're going to be talking mainly about the ones that he's done specifically versus ones that Charles Band has done specifically because again he's let some other people come in and use the Full Moon moniker as it were to make films under. Um, so without further ado, we're going to get into this. And if you need a refresher of how we're doing this, um, we're going to go by the earliest film for the director. Um, whoever's film came first. We're going to compare how much they had to work with versus how much they earned and what the audience score is. And then I'm going to pick which film that I like personally more. So let's get into it. First off, we're looking at 1982's Parasite by Charles Band. All right, Charlie Band, whatever. Um, it had a production cost of $800,000. That's pretty good, pretty good. Um, but when it turned to income time, gross income, it only made $2,270 back. Um, Now that's another thing is a lot of these numbers, give or take, some of them might be a little off, and that to me seems really low. But you got to think in the early '80s, especially for an independent company, they probably weren't able to show it in a lot of theaters. Um, and Parasite has a young Demi Moore in it. I've actually seen the movie. It's pretty decent. Definitely doesn't have a Full Moon feel. We didn't really get that until Puppet Master came along, and this predates Puppet Master. But it had a 16% audience score, so not a lot of people like this movie. Um, I could maybe see why in the beginning. It does start off a little slow. But then we're going to jump over to Trauma side, and Toxic Avenger came out in 1984. It had a production cost of only $500,000 and a gross income. And Lloyd Kaufman said this was like, a couple days after the release or a couple weeks, something like that. So the total income that it generated was $15 million. No wonder Trauma turned Toxie into their mascot, basically. It has a 64% audience score. Now, between Toxic Avenger and Parasite, which one am I going to pick? I think it's pretty obvious. I love Toxic Avenger, so hands down, Toxic Avenger wins this round. Then we're going to move on to the next Trauma film that came out in 1986, Class of Nukem High. This had a production cost of $400,000, so they brought the budget back down a little bit. Maybe they were hoping, hey, if we had a hit with Toxie, we can try to do the same thing. We'll just put less money into it. Um, Now it didn't quite make 15 million for the gross income, but it made 1.9 million. That's still pretty damn good. Like that's really impressive. They made basically four times their budget back and then some. Um, it has a 49% audience score, so a little bit less than the Toxic Avenger, and I can see why. Um, I haven't seen all the Nukem High movies, but I do remember the first one being a little more goofy than I thought it would be up until like the last 15 minutes or so. Um, then we're going over to Full Moon side for Doll Man versus Demonic Toys, which came out in 1993. This had a production cost of $350,000. Now, it's a little weird because Dollman and versus Demonic Toys uses stock footage from the first Dollman movie, the Demonic Toys movie, and another movie called Bad Channels. Um, so maybe it was, for certain scenes that they had to film, some of the special effects. Now, here's the problem when it comes to Full Moon and getting their gross information. Every single movie past this point, well, including this point, have all been direct to video. So there's not really numbers for how much it made because it wasn't released theatrically. And finding rental sales and all that, that's just insane. Like, we're not doing that. And I'm sure there's not even info for that online. Um, but the audience score is 23%. Now, between Class of Nukem High and Dollman versus Demonic Toys, it's been a while since I've seen either one. I would say Class of Nukem High is fairly more recent. Um, it does have some interesting moments in it. It's fun to recognize certain people in it that were also in Toxic Avenger. Um, but Dollman versus Demonic Toys is very bizarre and very fun. And it definitely gives that full moon energy, like outside of a Puppet Master movie. Um, uh, I'm gonna give it to Dollman versus Demonic Toys actually, because the Demonic Toys are pretty fun, at least in their earlier days. So yeah, I think that was a better one. Then in 1990, we have Sergeant Kabukiman NYPD. Now, this film had a budget, the highest budget of any film on this entire list, of $4 million. That's insane. And I was confused about that because it also said that Namco backed the film. Apparently, they were trying to figure out a way to make something that was more marketable, make toys and video games out of. Toxic Avenger did that previously with Toxic Crusaders. So it looks like they were trying to do the same thing with Sergeant Kabuki Man. Um, and it also got that much backing because they filmed Toxic Avenger Part 2 in Japan. And Japan was really impressed with how they did things, on a budget. And they actually, like, used a lot of Japanese culture in the film. Some of it for jokes, but they apparently still liked them enough to say, "Hey, we're gonna help back this movie," because they wanted to make a action hero type character. Now, this one surprisingly does not have a gross income. Um, Backed on a $4 million budget, it's really hard to think that they made even $1 million back. Like, I know we look at Toxic Avenger and Class of Nukem High, but those are the two highest numbers. So I'm gonna be generous and estimate maybe $1 million. That's a little less than Class of Nukem High. Um, Even though this does have a higher audience score with 58%, I don't know. It's such an odd movie. I've only seen Sergeant Kabuki Man once, and I couldn't get into it honestly. Um, then on the other side, on Full Moon, we have Head of the Family from 1996. Very bizarre movie. I could not find a production cost or the gross income for this movie. So most of the budgets on this have been fairly high up to this point. Dollman versus Demonic Toys was a lot less than Parasite. So if we're using that as a basis, it was almost half. Well, Head of the Family has a lot of good special effects. I'm going to go ahead and be generous and just say it had about $250,000, maybe. It has an audience score of 33%. Now, Sergeant Kabuki Man was not very entertaining to me. Head of the Family is very bizarre, but it at least was interesting. And I always get this mixed up with the next movie we're going to be talking about in a second. Um, but they're both good movies, and I do think Head of the Family is the more successful one, even though it has a lower audience score. But they did make a sequel. Um, so I think I'm going to go with Head of the Family for this one. So that's two so far for Full Moon. That's crazy. Then we have Blood Dolls from 1999. This is a Full Moon movie that is so much fun. It's really weird, really bizarre. Um, it's got a 48% audience score. I know we usually save that to the end, but then we have the production cost was $1 million, and you have the puppets, the three puppets in the movie, the Blood Dolls. You have the main guy who wears like a giant mask. You have a band playing in a cage. There's a whole lot going on, so I can see why the production cost was so high. But I'm just curious, like how they were managed to pull that off. Maybe these direct to video sales had something to do with it, or the rental numbers. Um, because that's a lot of money to pour into a non Puppet Master movie. And I'm sure, as you've seen, I haven't included a single Puppet Master movie on this list because they were all directed by other people other than Charles Band. He came up with the idea and stuff. Um, so Blood Dolls, good movie. Then we have Terror Firmer from 1999. This one had a production cost of only $500,000. So they went back to the basics, Toxic Avenger numbers. Um, it's pretty impressive if you've watched Terror Firmer and think like, wow, it's on the same level of budget as the original Toxic Avenger, and there's so much going on in the movie. But it is a lot of fun, a lot of crazy special effects. Of course, they reuse the car flip that they always use. It's like tradition at this point. This one had the lowest gross income out of anything on this list, which is very sad. Um, but it only showed in two theaters, so I'm wondering, you know, if they did that on purpose, like they just wanted to show it locally, or, I mean, I don't know. Um, it only has a gross income of $1,434. That is, maybe it did better, sales, rentals, stuff like that. I can only hope so. And it has an audience score of 75%. So that means it has a higher audience score than the original Toxic Avenger. I don't know how, but okay. Um, and I forgot to mention Blood Dolls has the highest audience score with 48%. But I can see why with that. It's out of all these movies, it is the most entertaining, actually good movie. Um, but if I had to choose between Blood Dolls and Terra Firma all the way, because Terra Firma was really surprisingly good, surprisingly funny, lots of good gore. So yeah, Terra Firma for sure. So Lloyd Kaufman has Toxic Avenger and Terra Firma. Charles Band has Dollman versus Demonic Toys and Head of the Family. We're tied. Let's see. We're on the last round. We have 2005's Ginger Dead Man, starring Gary Busey, who apparently got $25,000 of the budget. Now, it is estimated to have a very much lower budget. I can't imagine they would go into it with $1 million budget. So I estimated, based off of, some of the other numbers, to have a budget closer to the Dollman versus Demonic Toys budget. So maybe $200,000 to $300,000. And it has a audience score of 28%. So not very good. Not as bad as Dollman versus Demonic Toys. But, I can definitely see why the audience score is low on this movie. It's very bizarre. Then we have Poultrygeist Night of the Chicken Dead from 2006. This had a production cost of $500,000. So again, they're keeping that low budget. Troma's really setting the bar right there. And it had a gross income of $22,600. So a lot better than Terra Firma, because I'm assuming it showed more places. But but not quite reaching those heights of Toxic Avenger and Nukem High. But, I mean, you can't really expect it to. This has the second highest score. Okay, well, actually, it's matched right up there with Toxic Avenger. It's 64%. Um, and this is a no-brainer. I mean, it should be a no-brainer, but Poultrygeist, 10 times better than Ginger Dead Man. Maybe if we got to hear Gary Busey sing. Uh, Actually, I don't wish that on anyone. Um, so, surprise, surprise, Lloyd Kaufman is my favorite out of the two. Charles Band is great, but he wasn't responsible for all the Puppet Master movies. Otherwise, this would be a wash because I consistently enjoy more of those than I do even the Toxic Avenger films. Um, but like I said, I started my childhood with Trauma, with Toxic Avenger, so it makes sense that those movies resonate with me more. Um, and I've met Lloyd Kaufman, and he's a very nice man. I'm sure Charles Band is nice too, but I haven't met him, so who knows. So yeah, there you go. Do you guys have any suggestions for versus matches? Like I said, I want to at least keep the criteria that they have 5 horror movies with, uh, like in their directorials. That way I can pit the movies against each other, and hopefully movies that aren't too similar. Because I know there's some Italian directors that do like lots of cannibal or zombie stuff, and I'm like, we did that with Fulci. I tried to keep it a little different. But yeah, so let me know what you think. Are you a big Trauma fan? Are you a big Full Moon fan? Would you have chose Lloyd Kaufman, or do you think Charles Band has a uh, bigger career? I guess that sounded really weird the way I paused it, like I was thinking of something else. Um, but yeah, they're both good when it comes to direct to video releases. But I do think Full Moon, Full Moon, Full Moon was bigger in the VHS rental days because you could see tons of their movies all over the rental shelves. It would be rare to see Trauma movies on the shelves. Like you'd see maybe Toxic Avenger, Nukem High, Surf Nazis. What's the other one that I'm thinking of? I can't remember. But anyways, so yeah, there you guys have it. I like I said, maybe we'll do another one of these down the road if I can think of one. If not, I mean, I think we did some pretty good ones. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you for next week's video.